He's such a cunning linguist. Our little girl pounds steak. This girl eats more steak than I will. I'm a little bit afraid. Like her back and her legs are like ripped in a way that I'm kind of like concerned that we made a superhuman that might destroy us all.
The real ranchers, the real cowboys, the real farmers, they don't make enough money to support their family. Support your local rancher.
All respect to you for being vegan. And if you like approach these people of not like, fuck you too. It's like, hey, okay, I get it. You're angry at people. It's not us. I have more of a responsibility over this animal than you do. I try to put my little olive branch out to the vegans whenever I can, and it seems to work. I went vegan. But after like 8 months, I got bronchitis, decided to quit being vegan. If you go cheap on your food, you're going to end up paying for it in the long run in your health. If you're putting garbage inputs in yourself, think of yourself like you're an animal. I'll let you in on a secret.
Travis Browne and Ronda Rousey of Browsey Acres. So some of you guys know both were UFC fighters. Ronda has done wrestling and judo and some movies and stuff like that. But you guys are now ranching. What made you decide to do that? That's kind of there's easier ways to make money. Well, you guys made money the hard way and getting beat up all the time. That's a tough way to make money too. And then you want to make it even worse by ranching.
That doesn't sound like a natural progression to go from fighting into ranching. It was kind of the way that we came together as a couple. I had recurring zombie dreams. And so I was a little bit of a prepper, and he was all big into like bow hunting and, being able to source his own meat. So we found a way in the middle we wanted to learn to live 100% sustainably. Also because being prize fighters, you get like chunks of money at a time. You don't have like a steady income. And so we had to think of like, how are we going to bring our expenses as down as possible and be as like self-reliant as possible. And so, we started trying to, get our own water catchment and our own like power and Trav hunted for our meat, but being in Southern California, you can't really go out the back door and go hunting here. And so then Trav went on his mission to try and find us a cow to raise in the backyard, because we just got a place that had 2.5 acres in the back. And then his quest began to find the best of cows. How did it go, babe?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I took, you just start doing research, and then everything goes back to like when you look up like what's the best beef, what's the best tender, flavorful, all this kind of stuff, and it just leads back to there's Wagyu in there somewhere. Besides
myself, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You didn't have to look that one up.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So I just said everything. I just kept seeing Wagyu. And so then the hard part was trying to find somebody to buy one animal from, one steer from, because a lot of times they want to sell you 10, 20, or sell you genetics for you to start breeding animals. And at that time I was thinking to myself, like, I just got done getting punched in the face for 10 years. Why do I want to like breed these animals? I just want to raise one in my backyard. You know what I mean? And harvest it and have this source of beef, have this source of protein. And I knew where it came from. And that was another big driver for us as well, was knowing where our food came from. Like when you go hunting, you know how that animal lived, right? Like in the wild, eating everything it was supposed to eat, doing animal things. For us, knowing where your food came from is a big deal. And being in, former elite athletes, that was in the back of our mind as well. And actually a driver for us to do what we did. That's why we grow on veggies and do our water catchment. We don't drink the water, but it waters our stuff. And then now our animals. And that's the protein that we're eating.
So neither of you like came from a ranching family. Travis, you're hunting, but you didn't have because you guys are first generation. So, as professional athletes, as elite fighters, you had coaches and, obviously a support team. How do you guys figure this stuff out? Is this like, I'm just going to start ranching? Are there experts you guys draw upon? Obviously there's got to be, you learn trial and error to some degree, but is there someone that's like, this is how you do it? And obviously you guys are obviously know a lot of people throughout the world. You probably have people you can point to, but how did you learn how to do this? Because I mean, I'll have to say, because you guys sent me, a sample of your steaks, and they were delicious. And I'm not exaggerating. I eat a lot of steaks, and I've had some really good steaks, and I've had some not so good steaks, and you guys were definitely up there in the very good steaks. So how did you guys learn that? How did you sort of learn how to do this?
Thank you for that compliment. It means a lot, because we have put in a lot of time and effort and energy into this project of ours and into the ranch and into these animals. So that compliment really means a lot. During that research of trying to find those animals, I basically found the person who's now our partner to sell us one animal, because he was at the starting stages of his, like, growing his herd. He's been doing it for the last, what's it
Decade.
been, 14 years or so now, because we've known him now since 2017 or 18. And back then he was doing it for 10 years, I think. So it's 16 years now, right? So anyways, he's our partner now. That's who we work with, the Spitzbergens, Daniel Spitzbergen, and his father, Mark Spitzbergen. They've been a huge part of this and what we're doing and why we're doing it with the animals that we're breeding. I mean, they go down, like, Mark's a molecular biologist. So he goes in and looks at the breeding of the dame and the sires, and he's like, we want this gene and this dame and from this bull and this mix and match, you know what I mean? So it gets really specific. So we go have a lot of science in our breeding program. And then that also goes into our nutrition of these animals. And then when we started getting into this, Ronda and I said, we're not going to do this unless we do regenerative practices, because we don't want to go in and just decimate land and create more problems. We want to be part of the solution. So we hired Joel Saladin to come out and give us tips and kind of help us map out our ranch and how to do the regenerative ranching practices, rotational grazing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, when you have a broad spectrum diet, in my mind, you're doing the best for the animal. And so when they're on that fresh grass, getting all those minerals, vitamins and minerals, and we actually implemented chickens to bring in. And so we also sell poultry as well. So all of this stuff combined, it's really about taking care of the soil and giving these animals the best diet that they can have. So we lean on our partners, Daniel and Mark, to really help us in that. And even then, 16 years in, that's not generational. You know what I mean? They're still learning as well. But with both of that combined, and Ronda and I being able to ask why, right? Like, why do you do it that way? Why did they do it that way? Well, let's try this way. Do you see what I mean? Like, we're not scared to try new ways. We're not reinventing the wheel, but we're
also not entrenched in doing it the way that it's always been done. And so, we started out not with that generational knowledge. And so it was like largely YouTube University until we started to be able to find like Joe Salatin and all these other experts and things. And with the regenerative farming, a lot of people throw that word around. But to explain it a little bit more, it's basically going back into the old ways that things were done and mimicking these natural processes that these like great herds of grazers used to, these behaviors they used to have on these grasslands that just don't exist anymore. And so what we do is we rotationally graze our animals, and we keep them like concentrated on a small area and move them to a different area every day, because the grass basically the length of the blade is mirrored by the root on the bottom. And if it's always kept short, the root's always kept short. But if the grass is allowed to go through its entire growth cycle, while it's long, the roots grow long. And then when the cows come and graze it, they bite it down, it sheds those root hairs. And so all of that carbon it took from the atmosphere to grow those root hairs is now dumping into the soil. And every single time that they come and eat that grass, they're adding carbon and adding soil to it. And so that we say soil and not dirt, because it's actually living. It's a living thing. And when we first got this ranch, it had been really degraded and mismanaged, and it was more dirt than grass. And to see the land itself and the animals do what they were meant to do and bring this land back to life has been absolutely incredible. And that's why we brought the chickens in. It wasn't just so that we would have chickens. It was for the health and the taste of the cows themselves. They come in after the cows have already brought the grass down, and then they stress the soil even more and scratch it around, and they peck it, and this is like really mineral rich volcanic soil. And they eat the bugs, and they mix 300 pounds of their poop into just the area of a schooner every day. And then after it's stressed, we move them to a new area, and we don't touch it until the next growing season. And so then that's 300 pounds of chicken poop. Plus they've already spread out all of the cow patties as well into the soil. And so the soil is, it's just building and building and building every year and getting more and more nutritious for the cows. And so that's how you get like a lot of this meat that just like tastes like nothing, because they're eating nothing but GMO corn that is like, basically dead dirt that they have to put all these kinds of inputs in to get something to grow out of it that has basically no nutrient content. And so that's what we're trying to make, is not just as much meat as cheap as possible. We're trying to make like the most delicious, most nutrient dense meat that you can get. So it's actually like nourishing you, nourishing the animal, and like nourishing the land itself. And so it's like a virtuous circle.
Yeah, you guys do like the multi-species grazing a la Joel Salatin, and I've talked to Joel, and I've talked to Will Harris and Gabe Browne and Greg Judy, all these regenerative guys over the years I've got to meet. And I think what that is obviously an incredibly important thing for biodiversity, and it improves the water carrying capacity of the soil and all the stuff that goes with that, prevents runoff, and the stuff that we see with a lot of agriculture, whether it's plant or animal agriculture, doesn't really matter. It's just how we manage these things. And, when you guys, first started learning, I mean, obviously you go from fighting where you're probably not thinking about soil dynamics and poop and stuff like that to a totally different,
you don't know my pre-fight psyche. I could be thinking about poops.
Okay, well, maybe so. Why? Let me ask you. Right. Because I think it ties in nicely with obviously, as an athlete, food is very important as part of performance. And was there deciding to go to beef as something? Because some people say, why not grow something else, or maybe what was the decision to beef is where it's at, or I know you've added chickens now, but that sounds like the cattle are the primary driver of the operation, and everything else is added onto that.
So initially, like I was saying earlier, we just wanted to raise an animal here so we'd have our own source, right? And then that's like the story of Kobe is what got us into the industry, really. Kobe was our first steer. He's a full-blood Wagyu. We name all of our animals that we're going to eat after a cut or a meat or something like that. So it's not like, hey, go get Steve out of the freezer. You know what I mean? It can be kind of weird. But, so we raised them. He was such an amazing animal. He'd follow us around like a dog, just wanting scratches and pets. And I could walk him around on a halter and all this stuff. So it got a lot more difficult thinking about the day that we're going to harvest them, because we're going to do it the hard way. We're going to do it so that we're going to take the stress so our animal doesn't have to. That's the idea and how we want to raise our animals. So when it came to that day, I shot him because for him, it was just another day. He was getting fed. I was there putting his food down, all that stuff. And then one little bad instance and it's all over for him. He didn't even see it coming. We're all crying, right? At the time, we're brand new to this. This is our first animal, so we're all emotional and we're crying and all this kind of stuff. And it's now that I look back on it, it's funny. But we bring in the hanger steak because if you let it hang in the freezer or in the cooler too long, it'll dry out. So we bring it in and I cook it up that night. And my wife's sitting there before she even takes a bite. She's like crying. She's like, "Thank you, Kobe," and stuff like that. And
it's the best beef I ever tasted. Yeah.
And so then she took a bite and she's like, "Oh my gosh, babe, this is the best steak I've ever had." And I was like, "What? Whatever." Like, I didn't even know how to really cook then, like I do now. Now I can cook a mean steak. You know what I mean? Like, I'll put some of my steaks up against anybody's, but I didn't know what I was doing. So then I took a bite and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this really is like the best steak I've ever had. Been to Ruth Chris, been to all these other fancy steakhouses, and what I just did on a $50 grill in my backyard was better than anything I'd ever had, and all I did was those salt and pepper. And I was like, dude, what is going on here? So I called up our guy, because when we did, I was like, I'm never going to do this again because it's too hard. So I called up Daniel after we took that bite. I said, hey, when you bring the next one? He's like, well, I got one in just a couple months for you. I was like, perfect, bring them on down. And then as that time went on, it just kind of started talking. There's an opportunity with our now partner who was trying to expand his herd, but running into roadblocks as ranchers do without the support that they should be able to receive. So I talked to my wife. I said, babe, there's an opportunity. Like, we could be self-sufficient in beef protein for the rest of our lives. You know what I mean? And I think this is a great way in what we can do to really like help ourselves out. And then it turned into Browsey Acres, and learning about regenerative ranching and doing it what I feel is the right way, and doing the regenerative ranching. So that's how it kind of started, was from our steer Kobe.
Yeah, that's that just totally makes great sense. So, Ron, we talked a little off camera about this. You said you had a time where you dabbled with, I guess, bulimic veganism for a while. But I mean,
I was bulimic first.
Okay.
It came from basically being in a weight cutting sport. So ever since I was like a little girl, I had to beat a weight on a deadline. And I just never learned how to do that healthily. And so I started like binge eating at a very young age. I'd make weight and I would hoard like candy bars and like eat like an insane amount of candy bars. And then I just started to have a really unhealthy relationship with food, whereas I would just associate being full with feeling guilty, but I just wanted to feel like full until bursting all the time. And so after my second Olympics, I went vegan for 8 months, but it was not like I'm trying to get enough spinach to get my protein vegan. It was like I'm like semi an alcoholic, like drinking Jameson and sweet potato fries and, cans of corn and cans of corn and beans in the 99-cent store and calling myself a vegan. So I was pretty broke. I was smoking cigarettes. It was a time. And, but after like 8 months, I got bronchitis and, I decided to quit being vegan, but, it helped me in, my mental relationship with food, with being able to set limits for myself, because I wasn't able to stop or say no to anything. If I saw anything, I was obsessed with it. I had to eat it. And that's what the disordered eating was. And so being able to say, no, you can eat this, but you can't eat that. Even though I was like binge eating on like soy ice cream and vegan apple pie, like the practice of being able to say no to something helped me, and being able to be full to bursting without feeling guilty, kind of like it lost its like spell over me. And I was able to just kind of go back to, eating regular food, which I was just telling you before that I really miss the feeling of biting and tearing into things, because you just nothing vegan that you can bite and tear. So the first thing I had was an egg McMuffin, and it was glorious. I'll never have one again because they're so gross, but the texture is what I missed. But I'm not going to like hate on anyone for doing it, because it helped me in certain ways, mentally. But you were asking, do we get any like angry vegans on our social media page? And usually I just kind of like just talk everybody down and get everybody on our side. And I'm like, listen, like we're all on the same team here. All respect to you for being vegan. It takes a lot of discipline. Like I couldn't stay with that lifestyle. But you have to like accept that the whole world is not going to become vegan with you. And what we're trying to do is to take the way that these animals are managed, and that is like harmful to the ecosystem that you're always railing about, and make them part of the ecosystem again. Like these herbivores are part of these grasslands. And, a lot of these lands cannot be used for anything else. They can't be used for produce or anything. I doubt that we could grow anything really where we're at, because it's like high desert, it's just not enough. it's just not for that kind of cultivation. And so, regenerative farming is one of the most scalable solutions for climate change, where you can sequester huge amounts of carbon using these animals, and they're just not being managed correctly. And if you like approach these people of not like, fuck you too, it's like, hey, okay, I get it. You're angry at people. It's not us. And we're trying to like make sure these animals have a life worth living and treat them with respect. And we're doing it in a way that's actually like healing the land and things like that, And if you really look at where you get your food and eat responsibly, like even you as a vegan, where are you getting your corn? Where are you getting your soy? Where are you getting these other things? Like everybody, no matter what they eat, no matter what their diet is, they need to look at how their food is affecting, everyone around them. And we're trying to be part of the solution. And so like anybody that comes onto the page trying to start a fight, I like come to them with a plate of flowers, and I'm like, look, we're not mean to our cows. Look, my cow will give me kisses. I cry over these cows. I love them. And they're like, you can't love an animal because you eat it. And I'm like, no, I have more of a responsibility over this animal than you do, because I'm the one asking it to like sacrifice itself for my lifestyle. And so I owe it a good life. I owe it to care about it, And so like, I think so many people have this like, you can't care about animals because you eat them. It's like, no, you should care about them more because what they are doing for you. And so, yeah, I try to put my little olive branch out to the vegans whenever I can. And it seems to work, as long as you like approach people with logic. I mean, there's the one or two people out there that just, are mad at the world. But, in general, we're all on the same team, and, we're just trying to be healthy and, do the right thing for the planet, just like they are. We just have a different strategy.
Yeah, and one of the things that one of the things that Joel said is like to let cows be cows, let chickens be chickens. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that we really stress on our ranch, right? Is to let them do the natural things that they're supposed to do up until the day of harvest. We're not going to go vegan. It's okay though, but we're going to take care of our animals up to the day that they get harvested, and we're going to give them the best life that they can have until the day that they're harvested.
Yeah, there's two things on that. I mean, one, just the fact that you could be an Olympic level athlete and a professional athlete and still have just an absolute atrocious diet of, whatever, that always amazes me. And I think that's just part of, some of it's genetics, some of it's just being young and being able to absorb that stuff. And eventually it catches up with you. And the other thing is it's kind of the difference between animal welfare and animal rights, because vegans are always talking about animal rights, yet animal welfare, which is what we really care about, is what's being practiced by the people that care for the animals every day. And I know ranchers they're out there at 2:00 in the morning calving in a snowstorm. Where are the vegans at? When the animal's under distress. I mean, they're not out there doing this. The ranchers are the ones that are actually taking care of these animals. And every rancher I've ever talked to has a tremendous respect and care for the animals they take care of, because if they don't, that's not even good for their bottom line. You can't, sick animals are not going to, they're not good for you anyway. So why not do the best you can for those guys? So
well, and at the end of the day, if you have sick animals, like what kind of person does that make you? Right? It's not even about affecting your wallet, but it's about your moral compass, right? Anything that's under my either ownership or under my roof, in a sense, if I don't take care of that, either whether it's an animal, whether my dogs, right, whatever it is, what kind of moral compass do you have? But that's a big thing that for us that drives us. Is like we're never wrong doing the right thing, and whether it's a good or bad, maybe for the company or whatever it is what it is. It's the right thing to do. Like the infrastructure that this regenerative ranch has taken, and the amount of time and resources that putting up all these fences and digging all these water lines and putting all the infrastructure needed for this was way more than we ever would have thought. But it's the right thing to do. So we're willing to do it. And to talk about the vegan thing, like, I don't think people really understand that in order for something to live, it doesn't matter about the diet or whatever, something has to die. At bottom line, if you want to live, something has to die. If you're a vegan and you want to eat all the vegetables that you want to eat, where are those vegetables coming from? What animals, what habitat, what little microbes, what moles and what deer have been shot, what snakes are chopped up, what, you know what I mean? Like, don't talk to me about this, because don't take that ground, because you're wrong. If you're living, that means something had to die.
And that's what I think, it all comes down to like management and everything like that. Like, yeah, we raise these animals on pastures, but we're also creating a habitat for other animals as well. We have herds of antelope and come through, and all these kind of migratory birds that stay at our ponds and stuff like that. It's not just like a monoculture or anything like that. And the same could be said with like how people, there's regenerative operations where people are growing produce, like food forests and things like that, where other animals can come in, and it's just all about the management. And if you're growing the produce irresponsibly, you're going to get shitty produce that's unhealthy for you. If you're growing, the cows, if you're raising them irresponsibly, you're going to get shitty beef that's unhealthy for you. And so that's what we started doing this because we just wanted the healthiest, tastiest meat for our family. It just started off as like, we just want to be self-sufficient and know that our beef is good. And the first time that we fed this to our boys, they called it, they're like, is this butter beef? They thought there was this butter in it. And a lot of it comes down, how we are raised, but also it's to like how very special this breed, the Wagyu, is, and that it has like the highest monounsaturated fatty acids than any other kind of red meat. And one reason why that meat is so healthy is because it's not solid at room temperature. It doesn't like stick to the sides of your arteries, but it also makes it like melt in your mouth when you eat it. It makes it so delicious. And it just kind of shows you that stuff that like, it's not one of those things that, oh, it's candy, it tastes good, so it's bad for you. It's like, no, it tastes good because it's good for you. And now that I got you dropped some knowledge on me about drinking some alcohol with it. So the saturated fats that are in there, you could offset that with some alcohol. Can you drop that fact for me really quick so I can repeat it for forever?
Well,
what was that?
This is not an endorsement to go out and drink all the time, but it is known that saturated fat actually has been shown in both human and animal studies to mitigate some of the damage that ethanol does on the liver. So it actually protects your liver a little bit. So if you're going to have a glass of wine, pair it with a steak, and preferably a tasty steak that's well marbled. And, you guys, like you said, the Wagyu, it is known for its marbling, and particularly that intramuscular marbling is particularly high in monounsaturated fat. That's why, you get a really high grade Wagyu steak and it's literally melting at room temperature just about, and you got to cook it very quickly and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I will go to cattlemen's organizations and lecture them as a doctor. I'm the doctor that's promoting eating a bunch of beef. And I have to tell these guys, look, the product you're making is in generally a health food. Beef is a health food. It really, really is. And we've been demonizing it incorrectly for, 50, 60 years now. And we're finally starting to see the tide sort of turning in that way. But yeah, it's, so how many kiddos do you guys have?
3.
3 of them.
2 boys
okay.
and a baby girl.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you got a pretty busy household. And they it's kind of funny. You probably notice the kids naturally love things like beef. I mean, it is, did you guys notice that with your little kids?
Our little girl pounds steak, like beef steak. I mean, our steak specifically, I think I've tried to feed her other stuff. She's like, what is this crap? This isn't regenerative Wagyu, but
she'll literally spit it out.
Yeah. But man, this girl eats more steak than I will. I'm a little bit afraid in a way because like when I was 13, I broke my mom's wrist during sparring and I didn't know it. And she's 2 years old, doesn't have a roll on her. Like her back and her legs are like ripped in a way that I'm kind of like concerned that we made a superhuman that might destroy us all. And a friend of ours was like, look at those Fuji apples on her calves. I'm like, I know, she's 2. They're like, what do you do? Like, what are you feeding her? And I'm like, lots of Wagyu steak. Like that's basically all she eats all day. I mean, she has other stuff too, but man, this girl puts it away like more than I'm eating, more than my portions. I'm like, Jesus, girl. But I mean, she's also like off the charts for height, like Travis 6'7", and there's like, here's the point for 99 percentile for height, and like here's Poe. I mean, she's like eye to eye with 4-year-olds. It's insane. But yeah, we're making a little superhuman because she's eating jet fuel every single day, man. Yeah. And our boys too, they're like crazy, like athletes. And they just went from like these little tiny little kids to like these like jacked young men walking around the house talking about going to the NFL. And I'm like, what happened? My little boys are just like these just beasts, but everybody eats great. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's active, and some genetics, it has to do with a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, well, speaking of genetics, you guys are both professional fighters, obviously very, very high levels on both sides. Do you guys have any like sort of, what are your thoughts about your kids getting into fighting? Is that something you encourage, discourage? What would you say about that? Having experienced at the highest level, would you encourage your kids to get into that?
Well, they'd have to know how to fight just because of, self-defense. And I think like just, it's great for confidence and what's the term that I'm looking for? Like character building and stuff like that. But
you don't know what you're made of until you get punched in the face.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That tells a lot about you.
Yeah, character revealing as well. But you can't make someone fight like professionally or competitively. That's got to be like something inside of you that like in that moment, like there's got to be something in you that wants to beat somebody with your bare hands, and like some people are just like, in a safe setting, and you know what I mean? In a like athletic setting. Okay, I'm an Olympian here. But there has to be something in you. Like even as like a little girl, there was just that, no, like in me. And I think maybe it came from being like the youngest of all my sisters. Oh yeah, gotta have a little fuck you in you, fuck you. But, you can't like force that into anyone. Like my little sister was really great at judo when she was little, but she's like a team player. She wanted to like play soccer and like work with people. And, I don't know, you have to have like a little bit of like angst or something in you, that isn't taught. And so you can't force someone into that. And so I'm really excited to see like the boys are really like, they're also very like team player kind of guy. Like they love football. They love to like hit and smash and all of this stuff, but they love like being able to like work with everybody in that camaraderie of a team. And I think like being a fighter, it's kind of like a very lonely, the lonely path of like the samurai kind of a thing of, I'm the lone warrior walking alone with my katana on my back kind of a thing. And that's like a personality that you can't teach. So if she wants to walk the path of the warrior alone, I will definitely help her. But if she wants to be, a basketball player or, be a kicker for the football, for NFL, anything, I think she's going to be incredible at anything she wants to do. And the boys have already kind of found what they love. And, yeah, you can't force it. You just kind of have to let it happen.
But I think we'll encourage it.
Yeah, of course. I will enable her to the nth degree, but can't make it happen.
Yeah, I like I said, I just start, I'm almost 60 now, and I started doing jiu-jitsu a couple of years ago, and it's very sort of, it's revealing. Somebody's trying to strangle you. It's like that doesn't happen day to day normally, so it puts everything in perspective, and I boxed a little bit in college, so I got punched in the face a few times. I decided I didn't like having headaches and my jaw messed up and I couldn't eat, so I was like, I'll go be a doctor instead. There's better ways to make a living. But I have a hell of a lot of respect for what you guys, were able to do and still continue to do. Ronda, it sounds like you grew up in a judo household because obviously you were an Olympian in judo. And then Travis, how did you get into? How did you guys get into fighting in the first place?
Me? Oh, me? My mom was she actually was an athlete and a doctor at the same time, but my family is kind of like weirdly incredible at everything. And so, my mom like got a perfect score at the SATs at 16, graduated college at 19. She was working as like a single mother engineer in the 80s and was the first American to win the world championships in judo while getting her PhD as a single mom. She's just absolutely incredible.
Wow.
I'm like, I'm kind
amazing.
of a slouch. Like I just decided to I'm like the dumb jock of the family. I decided to go be an athlete. Everyone else is like all kinds of degrees and stuff. But like my sisters just weren't into it at all. We all were like required to try judo. My sister Maria won her first tournament when she was 6, and she was like, I'm going to retire on top. That's it for me. And then my sister Jennifer, she tried it when she was around 12, and you do chokes in judo when you're at 13, and someone tried to choke her when she was 12, and she was like, fuck this forever now. And then I tried it when I was, 10, about to turn 11. And I was like, this is amazing. And then like was completely obsessed with it. And I remember my first practice, I didn't have a hair tie and my hair was like all over the place. I was a swimmer before that. And the idea that it wasn't just go on a straight line back and forth. It was like the possibilities were endless, and it was like problem solving, and it was like so engaging mentally. Is why I loved it so much. And then my little sister like begged to do it since she was like 4. And then she started it very, very young. And then was just kind of like, I just love people, and went into soccer and like loves to, it's just a personality thing. So we all tried it, but I was the one that hit the ground running and loved it. And then Trav had a very different, a very different path.
Yeah. So I was a basketball player growing up, and went to junior college, and just school wasn't for me. And that was one of my regrets, right? You know how there's like something that you're just kind of, oh man, I'd kick yourself in the butt about, and just school wasn't for me. So I ended up dropping out, but I still wanted to be an athlete. So anyways, I drop out at maybe 20, start working. I'm a painter. I do dog training, and everything that I've always done. I end up working in that industry for a little bit, and then I start my own company, and then I do it. And then I get into another, maybe career or whatever. And then I start working for somebody, start my own business, and then stop. And then when I was about 27, I found Jiujitsu, and, did that for about a year. And at the end of that year, there was an amateur fight, like called the Smoker for Muay Thai. And so I went out, had a smoker, knocked the guy out, like 30 seconds.
Like a perfect straight right when no one ever told him how to do it in his life. Like the most naturally gifted athlete I've ever seen in my life. At 27, he started. I'm your biggest.
Yeah, that's late to start, I would imagine.
That's incredibly late. Yeah, incredibly late. So then I had my first fight in 2009, my first professional fight, which was down in Tijuana, Mexico. You can bet that the sanitation was up to standard there. So I go down there, have my first fight, knock the guy out, hit him like 47 times in 32 seconds.
Was it only leg kicks? Because
That was my second fight. I'm getting to that one. So
I thought this was the second fight we were at.
So yeah. So Jiu-Jitsu was like my gateway martial arts, really. And then while I was at the Jiu-Jitsu school that I started at, a guy came in that was an MMA fighter. This is where I got to wanting to do a smoker, and then eventually into MMA. He was like a light heavyweight or something like that. He comes in the gym. His sparring partner didn't show up. So they're like, hey, you, the biggest guy in the room, do you want to get punched by this guy? And I was like, sure. And so I was just like, they're like putting on my gloves. I don't even think I had wrist or had wraps on, and they're putting all the gear on me, and I'm like,
he's got the most solid hands I've ever seen, by the way. Continue.
And I'm like, yeah. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm gonna go punch you in the face. I'm like, whatever, just kind of feel like George from Of Mice and Men, just and just move forward. You know what I mean? And so that's what I did, and I ended up holding my own and actually beating him up for a majority of the rounds. So the coaches were kind of like, hey, dude, you got to give this a shot. And I was like, okay, sounds good. Like, how do you do it? You know what I mean? And they're like, well, there's a smoker in about a month. And I was like, well, I don't smoke. And they're like, no, that's an amateur Muay Thai fight. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And so then I go and I do the fight, knock him out. Then I have my first fight professionally in TJ, maybe like a couple months after that. And then my first year of fighting, I had 11 fights.
Wow. That's a lot of fights.
And yeah, in a year. So, and then the UFC picked me up in 2010. And then I spent the rest of my career with them.
Like, this is like how insane what he did is. Like, I was recognized as like a prodigy at like 10. and was given like, you know, all this super targeted training with the best in the world ever since I was really little. Like everyone thought I came out of nowhere, but like I like was the best of the best that ever came up in USA Judo from a very young age, you know, and had Olympic training, all these coaches and all this stuff. And we started MMA at the same time. And it took us the exact amount of time to get into the UFC. And he did it with zero combat sports background at all. And, you know, went from not doing any kind of combat sport at all to like, you know, #1 contender in like a blink of an eye with like zero experience. It still like blows my mind. Like Trav just sees something and he like downloads it and he just does it. Like when I see his first match and he does like a perfect straight right, I'm like, fuck you. It took me like a year to figure that out. Like I tried so hard and like cried and like took me so much time to figure it out. And he's like, oh, like this doink. Like that's so unfair, but he is like so talented and the best student that I've ever seen. And so like him coming into, you know, Wagyu and everything like that, like he's been doing this over and over again his whole life of like, I'm just going to try this new thing. Oh, looks like I'm great at it. I'm going to try this new thing. Oh, looks like I'm fantastic at it. And so when he came into to Wagyu, he's like, you know, so humble and, you know, just so sweet and like, you know, but, I know he's my favorite person ever, but he comes in and he's like, you know, I don't know anything. I just got punched in the face for a living. But, you know, he has the humility to hit the ground running and know that he doesn't know anything and then just absorbs everything so quickly and becomes an expert so quickly. And I'm just in awe of you, babe, and how you've gone from like zero to amazing. And I'm just trying to keep up. And you're my beef guru. I love you.
So were you guys together when you first went into the UFC? Both of y'all were already together and stuff like that? Or when did you
No.
We didn't know each other.
We're star-crossed lovers.
I get it. Okay. So
That's another story.
Did you see him at a fight or did he see you at a fight or how did you guys even meet?
I mean, I don't remember meeting him the first time.
Yeah. So it was my first headliner. It was my first loss, actually. It was my first headliner against Bigfoot Silva. And we're in where the main event, like in the back right before weigh-ins or like, you know, when they're doing all the meetings and everything like that, usually you'll have all the fighters together and then the main event kind of get their own locker rooms. Right. And so this was my first main event. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I get my own locker room. I'm not out there with the rest of the crew, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And then UFC brass comes up and they open the door. I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, we need this room and I need you out. And I was like, excuse me, why? Like, I'm like the main event. They're like, come on, just follow us. And I start walking out and she walks in my room. I was like, the fuck? You know what I mean?
Take a nap.
Yeah, she needed to go take a nap. And so, you know, so I'm sitting there. And I'm like, and honestly, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, yeah, I get it. And so that's when I introduced myself for the first time and she doesn't ever remember.
I don't remember. I was to get the fuck out of my room. I'll never remember you.
Yeah.
Goodbye forever. Never mind. I'll see you later. I'll marry you and fall in love with you. It's fine.
And have my children.
Oh, all you babies.
So then over the next couple of years, we had met at different fights and, you know, said hi, shook hands, all that kind of stuff. And then, what ended up happening is I was at Jackson's MMA. And at that time, there was a lot of internal problems there between the coaches and some of the fighters and coaches, you know what I mean? It was just like kind of this weird atmosphere. And I didn't feel like I was getting enough of the, training that I needed to, further my personal career, right? Like I needed a little more, one-on-one time, if that makes sense. And so I started looking around and what was my weakness was my footwork and my boxing. Right. That was my I could always throw kicks and I'm decent on the ground and all that kind of stuff. But my footwork and boxing is something I really needed to work on. So I was watching a like one of the UFC kind of, they follow fighters around and like stuff like that. And Jake Ellenberger went to Edmonds Harvardian, and then also Clay Guida went there to work on his boxing and footwork. And so I was watching this and I was like, man, I think that would be a great fit for me. So one time at a UFC event, I saw Ronda and Edmond, and I introduced, and that's when I kind of like shook Edmond's hand. I was like, hey, it's really nice to meet you. I would love to, maybe get a chance to come hit mitts with you sometime to see if, it might be something we could work together, and that's kind of how I really got introduced to Ronda. But even then, at that time, it wasn't even like that. It was like, hey, buddy, freaking high five. Like, yeah, dude.
Yeah,
like,
we didn't
what's up,
even
bro?
know.
You
We
know
were
what
on
I
the
mean?
same card. We were on the New Year's card together. It
Yeah.
was really cute how we would just like work completely clueless about how we were totally
Yeah.
with each other. And we were sitting next to each other on the dais of the post-fight press conference. That's like,
Yeah.
we were like joking about like balls and stuff like that.
Yeah, Ronda used to have
like,
balls
all
hanging in
high
her.
after winning, not like high, but you're like high off the win. And we're just like, oh man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved your sense of humor right away. But it took us like a year and a half to like really recognize each other. I was like, oh my God, I have like known you every lifetime since the beginning of the universe. How did I not realize this till now? But, I got a book coming out in April that really goes down into this into like real depth. So if you really want to hear the whole story, you can just like buy my book. It's cool.
What's the name of the book going to be?
It's called Our Fight.
Our Fight. Hey, let me ask you a question, Ron, about a lot of UFC champs. I mean, the wrestling backgrounds, jiu-jitsu backgrounds, some of them are strikers. You don't see a lot of like judo talked about, even though judo, there's a guy at my gym. He's a black belt in judo. He's been doing judo since he's 4. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And every time I go against him, I'm 6'5", 265. I'm a big guy. He's a smaller guy. He just kills me. I hate it, man.
Mm-hmm.
He just does the same thing to me over time. I can't stop him. But did you get to use much judo in the UFC? I mean, you're not doing.
Are you kidding?
I don't know. I mean, we're doing big throws and stuff like that.
All I did was judo. Everything
Really? Okay.
that I learned in striking was to enable my judo. But I had a very different style of judo than most people because as an American, we're not very popular internationally. If you didn't know that,
It's like Russians and some of the other folks. Yeah, right.
Yeah, like the international referees are kind of like, oh, fuck you. And so I not only had to beat my opponent, I had to kind of like beat some like really crooked refereeing. And so I couldn't like beat people by like the point system. I had to like make every match into a fight. And so judo is actually has like, I think like by participating countries, it's only second to soccer in how widespread it is throughout the world. And a lot of countries that like don't even let women do sports will let women do judo. It's considered like a high class sport. So for women, it was like the highest amount of competition for a combat sport. And so I knew that I could beat any of these chicks in an actual fight if I made the match into a fight. Some girls could like play the refs and, win on points or something like that. But it was always because they were doing some pussy ass shit. And so it made me into like basically the baddest bitch on the planet out of necessity. And I tore my knee out when I was 16. And so judo, you can kind of get away with not having like any newaza, like groundwork, what they say in jiu-jitsu. And so my mom was actually the best in the world at arm bars when she was competing because she tore out her knee very young. And so I tore my knee and basically spent an entire year only doing mat work. And we used to call it Ronda's happy corner of mat work. And while everyone was doing tachiwaza, which was like the standing technique, someone would come over into my corner and I would do, groundwork with them. And it also forced me to learn completely new throws. Like one of my best throws before that was like a left uchimata, which is one of those pretty judo throws where you like stand on your foot and you do a splits in the air and they go flying and it's very pretty, look like a fountain. But I had to completely relearn all of the throws I was using, things that didn't use my right leg. So I had to completely make a new system of fighting that didn't involve my right leg. So it was kind of a lot by chance in that I had the most diverse skill set of throws of anybody in the sport. Most people get really good at a forward throw and a backward throw, and then just do variations of that back and forth. Whereas I had like 20 different throws that I would do. I went to a dojo that the coaches there are really great at grip fighting. That was one thing that they were really good at, which now grip fighting kind of got phased out of the sport. It's kind of unrecognizable, but it kind of is like those kind of skills that like Greco-Roman wrestling, the pummeling, the being able to control people's hands and stuff like that. I made it so like the other person couldn't even put a hand on me. Like I was just so dominant in the clinch because of that. And then, I was the best on the ground. And so it was because of all of these factors that I developed this style of judo that was the perfect for combat sports, for an actual fight. And so that's kind of not what's taught now, especially because like the referees are so like corrupt. They keep changing every time like the Japanese athletes start to lose in some way, they'll make that thing illegal. And so the sport is basically unrecognizable now. You can't even dive for the legs. There's no grip fighting allowed. It's like, I used to believe that it was the most applicable sport to combat sport, like most applicable grappling are to combat sports. But I don't think so anymore. But my style of judo, like a lot of wrestlers, they telegraph if they change levels before they close. Whereas I had this very upright posture. I couldn't shoot for the legs because my knee was trash. So no one could really tell if I was coming in to strike or if I was coming in to clinch. And, it was just like a whole bunch of coincidences that fell together for me to develop the perfect grappling style and the referees are super corrupt assholes, right? So, they would give me no time to work on the ground. So like a lot of, like back in my mom's day, in her day, they would give her up to 25 seconds from when they hit the ground from a throw in order to work towards an armbar. These fucking assholes, the second you hit the ground, they would call they would call you to stop immediately. And so I had to have such quick transitions that I was catching these fucking bitches as we were hitting the ground. And so it forced me to have the best arm bars in the world, the fastest transitions in the world, the best clinch work in the world, and the most diverse moveset of throws. And so it was a lot of those things that would have been considered like, disadvantages in that sport became huge advantages for me in MMA. And so a lot of it was coincidence and just me being awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it works so clearly. But do you guys still train at all, and have you guys wrestled with each other a few times?
I try to wrestle with him, and he just like tickles me and makes me piss myself, and it doesn't work out. He won't.
Don't just put it on me. No, don't just put it on me.
He tickles me.
Anytime we start getting in an exchange or something like that, we usually just end up laughing and goofing off, and it's like we can't do it serious. You know what I mean?
No, it's because I will catch him in some shit.
No,
and then
she'll catch me. There's times that she's caught me, but then there's also times where we'll start going and I'll defend something not by strength, but by using a technique or my brain, like the right way. You'll be really witty. Yeah. And she'll just start laughing. She'll be like, oh my gosh, that was so good. Because it's like a conversation, when you're moving with somebody, and he's such a cunning linguist with his body. And, so he'll have like a comeback for something that I did that's like so witty. It'll make me laugh. And then, it just turns into a giggle fest. We really can't.
What's the size difference between you two guys? Because Travis, you said you're 6'7". I don't know, Ron. I can't remember how tall you are.
I'm just like, okay, I'll let you in on a secret. Okay, I said on my fighting and everything that I'm 5'7", but actually, I was 5'6.25" and would round up to try and make myself sound tougher. And we just measured me again, and I'm like 5'5" and like 6'8". I'm so small. I'm like fucking shrinking. Yeah. So when people see me, they're like, I thought you'd be bigger. And I'm like, well, I guess that's like, the tagline in Roadhouse. So yeah, cool. But yeah, everyone thinks I'm big. I'm just like really compact.
She's little.
I'm just little.
What do you weigh, Travis?
Travis,
what do you weigh right now?
About 255.
250. Yeah. So gosh, 100 some pounds difference, I'm sure. And more than a foot difference.
Yeah.
155. Don't care.
At least 100 pounds. Yeah.
It fluctuates. I have a range.
Let me go back to the cattle ranching stuff, because I know that's something you guys want to talk about a little bit, but how big's the herd up there in you said near Klamath Falls in Oregon, so Southern Oregon. How big's the herd, and do you have like long-term goals now that you've gone past just the one animal for us to eat? What's the current plan?
Yeah. So, currently we have, roughly 300 head. And we're growing that right now. We're doing a lot of growing our full blood herd, because there's not a lot. There's like 5,000 head of full blood Japanese Wagyu here in the United States. So one of the leading ranches is Lone Mountain Ranch. They have the most, right, I would say, in one spot of full blood Wagyu, and we want to grow that part of our herd, and then also our F1s, our American Wagyu, that's mixed, Wagyu and Angus.
I just want to jump in quickly here and let you get right back to this, that most people, when they have Wagyu, it's not full blood Wagyu. Mm-hmm. If it just says Wagyu instead of full blood Wagyu, it's a Wagyu mix, usually an Angus, Angus Wagyu mix, which is, we are also developing that herd as well. And we love that mix, but it's a very different flavor It's very different flavor profile than the full blood. Continue.
Yeah. So, combined with the acreage that we have, combined with our place and our partner's place, which is basically neighboring ranches, we would love to get up to 750 to 1,000 head, working the regenerative cycle, with that whole infrastructure. So that's our goal. We just had our first main harvest or big harvest for us of about 70 animals this last winter. So now's the time for us to really start upping our marketing and getting people to know that we have this amazing product. I mean, again, you tasted it, and thank you so much for those compliments. It means a lot, especially coming from you, somebody that eats steak all the time.
Yeah, I eat, I'm not exaggerating, I eat 3 to 4 pounds of steak every single day. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for like 8 years. I've literally probably consumed 10,000 steaks in the last 8 years, and without exaggerating. Yeah. So I eat a lot of steak, and I'm not kidding. Yours was really good. I was really impressed. Yeah. Like I've had a lot of people send me steaks, and it's, it's often good, but I was like, wow, this is pretty darn good stuff. So yeah. So good on you guys for doing that.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's our goal. We want to get up to that number where we can have a good mix of our full blood and F1 coming off the ranch every year. So, that's our goal. And then hopefully, I think, Will Harris said it best, is it's not easily scalable, but you can repeat. It's repeatable. So after we get to the maximized amount of animals on this land, once we've maximized that out with our chickens, with eventually even bringing hogs in and having the different species, we would absolutely love to start moving to maybe different states within the United States and repeat this process throughout. And then also we have plans to move to Hawaii. This is something that I absolutely passionate about, bringing to Hawaii and feeding the local people the healthiest beef that you can possibly get. Obesity is big over there. Overeating is big over there. So I want to help provide, be a solution to that problem when we move out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think because they've got some grass-finished beef out in Hawaii. I know there's some people that do that on the different islands there, and I think particularly among the Native Hawaiians, they have a big problem, just like with other Native Americans and stuff. They've got diabetes and obesity and all those things are happening there for sure. Do you guys know? Do you know who Alan Williams is? Have you heard of Alan Williams? He's at Joyce Farms down, I think, in Alabama. So he talks about, if we can expand this regenerative sort of agriculture to a certain percentage of acres in the U.S., I mean, we can literally offset all of the carbon emissions, if that's the thing we're worried about. So cows can be the solution, but it takes a lot of people to want to do that, which is, because you guys, the average age of a rancher in the United States is like 63. I mean, they're all like getting old and retiring. So it's good to see we got some young blood, so to speak, and kind of jumping. And
we want to make that cool. We want to make ranching cool again. We want to be a part of that process. We want to show kids, a younger kid, like, look at what they did as professions and what they were able to accomplish. But what do they want to do when they retire? go ranch. There is absolutely nothing more beautiful in my mind than when waking up early on gathering day, riding your horse out, going out into the mountains, into the pastures when it's nice and foggy, fog sitting low and all that kind of stuff. And you're riding through, grabbing all these pairs to bring them in, to start sorting them off, to start working the branding the next day, all the way from calling your neighbors to have them come help, to the enjoyment that you have with the success of the branding day of just that day's worth of work. It is so enjoyable, and there's so much beauty in that. And I think that's where I would absolutely love to maybe even develop some kind of program or something like that, where you get kids to come out and see that, to be a part of that, to put dirt in their hands. I think that's lost these days. Put dirt in their hands, let them get dirty and go be kids. Don't put them in a classroom to be robots. You know what I mean? Or if they are, give them that opportunity to come out and just be a kid.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with formal education. We're not saying, even though I am a high school dropout, but I'm not, everyone else in my family has degrees, but there is something that you learn, you learn more of being hands-on than just in theory and stuff like that. But it's also so fulfilling in so many different ways. Like Trav is really big into the roping and, doing all the cowboying and stuff. But my favorite part is taking a piece of land that's completely degraded and, just bringing it back to life. And there's so much doom and gloom and everything happening all over the place. And for, just be able to take one little spot. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take this one little piece of the world and make it better and watch it just come back to life, and all of these other animals coming in, and, the soil filling in, and it just becoming lush and full of life again. That's my favorite part. Trav likes to, walk out into the pastures and see the fog, but I like to walk out and see it change for the better, and know that oh my God, I'm doing that. I'm a real steward of the land. I'm having a positive effect in the world that I can actually see, which is the opposite of plugging away at a job that you just feel is completely useless in the grand scheme of things. I've never felt I had a better effect and more useful, and I have felt more validated doing things that are validating in themselves, instead of looking for that validation in oh my God, how many likes or how many views or how many whatever I get in things. And I think most kids now say that what they want to do when they grow up is be an influencer. I mean, there's no more influence that you could have than influencing the land itself. And I think being able to spread that satisfaction that you get it's a movement that's happening. It's a shame that the average age of farmers and ranchers is in their 60s, but there's so many people that want to do that want to be, self-sufficient and live off the land and have that kind of lifestyle, but they are so intimidated by it because there's so much that you don't know. And so that's kind of what we want to do, is we want to be that example of, you don't have to come from several generations of farmers or ranchers to be able to do this and to be able to succeed at it. And so we're trying to walk the walk instead of just sitting around being oh God, would someone please do something about climate change?
That, that's truly powerful. You're talking about how you actually impact the world, and it is very much, because a lot of people are in a job where they're making widgets or they're punching a clock, and it's not very fulfilling. And so that's something eventually, when I get done trying to convince everybody not to, eat themselves to death, that would be something I'd love to be able to do, to have a ranch and feed myself, because I worry about the beef supply. I'm like, what are they going to do? Make us eat all bugs and stuff like that? We got to keep the ranchers in business. Sure.
You can do both at the same time.
Let me ask you a quick question about the Wagyu specifically, because how are they? Because obviously, so there's not that many in the U.S. overall, and you guys have a chunk of them. Are they difficult breeds? Are they easy breeds? Do they take to certain environments? Because I know some people black cows in the hot weather don't do as good, and there's different advantages to different ones. How is that full Wagyu breed? How do they act?
Yeah. So I don't think it's, I think it's because of the genetics that are here, right? They all came from Japan. right? And in the 90s, they actually sent the best genetics over here, some of the best genetics over to the United States, so that they could then kind of like repeat that and breed here and raise here because we have more land, but then send the meat back to Japan. Well, they came out with mad cow disease, right? Or they didn't come out with it. What?
It was foot and mouth disease.
Oh, foot and mouth disease. And so it decimated like 80% of their animals in Japan. So then they made it a law that they're not allowed to send any more genetics out. So what we have here in the States is what we have. We are able to get our hands on a lot of the foundational genetics that were sent over in the 90s. And then some of the most sought after bulls that have been bred out here since then. We got like the last 100 straws of one. He actually died in like 2016, tragic accident the bull did, but we were able to secure about 100 of those vials of those genetics. So anyways, what it comes down to is it's very expensive, right? And especially if you want to breed, like I was saying earlier, not all Wagyu are created equal. If you have our Wagyu compared to another, there's like there's Kadaka, there's shoot, man, I'm totally, because I'm on the spot right now, forgetting the other ones. But we don't
Tajima.
Tajima. Shamani.
Tajima.
Yeah, so that's kind of a joke. But anyways, so there's Tajima, Shamani, and Kadaka. Like those are the three kind of like different avenues you can go. But we're heavy on one of them. You know what I mean? Because we really like the tenderness, the profiles that they have, and they also have some of the genetic markers that we're looking for. So again, it's really about, it's expensive to breed them, you know, and there's not a lot of genetics out there to do so, because you're gonna have to do embryo transplant, or you're gonna have to do AI or something like that. Or if you have a full blood bull, is it a good producer? Is it what you're looking for? Something that the Japanese would be proud of to call Wagyu, or are you just doing some backyard breeding? And oh yeah, I have a Wagyu bull and I don't know what it produces. I don't know what it does. I don't know what the tenderness does, or the marbling, or the taste. And so you see what I mean? So it can get like that. So it's like the new breed. And I really feel like almost every ranch is going to have Wagyu somewhere in their herd in the next 10 years, because it does nothing but improve your meat quality. So that's kind of.
But like different people breed for different things. Like we were watching a documentary on Wagyu, and they were talking about in Australia, they were selectively breeding the Wagyu so they would be more tolerant of the environment and of the heat, and like of, you know, the different kind of stressors and things that they have out there. Whereas in Japan, they are breeding specifically for the tenderness and the marbling and everything like that. And so we are, you know, definitely leaning more towards the Japanese style of breeding, but they are really tough animals, especially if they're healthy. Like my favorite steer ever was Porter. He was my puppy. Like Kobe was his puppy, Porter was my puppy. And he was such a chunky monkey and so sweet, but he would lay out he would have all kinds of shade, all kinds of water, everything that he ever wanted, all kinds of room. And he would lay out in the sun when it was like 110 degrees out and just bake in the sun. I'm like, why? I would try to touch his fur and it would be like hot. Like it would burn my hand to touch him. And, that fat actually acts like an insulator. It keeps them cool, as well as keeping them warm. And also they're just a smaller breed. They don't get as big and as like say an Angus or something else, and they grow a lot slower. And so you're spending a lot of more time and money on them to let them get older and live longer, and they're not getting as big and they're not growing as fast. And so that's another reason why they are more expensive. But they really are incredible animals. They started out as like working animals, like to pull plows and stuff like that in Japan, which is why they have that intermuscular fat, is to be able to, you know, to draw off of that energy while like pulling heavy loads and stuff like that. So it's an incredible breed if you really dive into it. But that's one reason why they are more expensive.
So like an Angus will, 1,400 pounds, maybe more. What do you guys finish out a Wagyu at, a full Wagyu? What do they weigh in? Do you guys know?
Yeah, so here in Southern California, it's a little bit heavier because they're on the Browsey Acres, like the Southern California diet. We call them the Browsey Acre blondes because they get bleached in the sun.
Yeah.
But the guys down here, we had one that was at like 1150 at hanging weight. So when on the hoof, he was about 1786.
Was that Porter?
Yep, that was Porter. Yeah, and then Kobe was about 15. Kobe was about 15. And so, again, like Ronda was talking about, I think that's a big reason why the full-blood Wagyu, there's not many out here, is because it costs too much and you don't get as much bang for your buck. But that's not what we're about. We're really after quality, not quantity. A lot of these industries will raise out their animals to maybe 18 months and then they'll go to slaughter. And that's kind of a long time. And that's also why there's not a lot of monounsaturated fatty acids. The longer time you raise them and the stuff that you give them to eat, our full bloods don't go until they're 33 months. So you can imagine all the inputs, all the extra labor and all that stuff that it goes into raising that animal. You're literally almost doubling that time that it's on the ground. And then our F1s are between 27 and 30 months, depending on how they are and what they're looking like. But really, it's just kind of, those are the time frames. And so that is why our meat is going to be a little more expensive, but the quality is what you get when you get from us.
And the health too. You end up, if you go cheap on your food, you're going to end up paying for it in the long run in your health, like that you're not saving that money forever. You're just going to pay it later. And like in your medical bills in one way or another, if you're eating, like garbage, if you're putting garbage inputs in yourself, think of yourself like you're an animal, you're going to get, problems down the road. And like a lot of these diseases that are spiking these days are all food related, and our food system is largely broken. And it's because people are thinking of, okay, how can we get as much as cheap as possible? And it kind of like reminds me of the red delicious apple that used to be like so delicious and good, but because people were only breeding it for how it looked, we now get these, these big giant red apples that like taste like crap and have no nutritional value. And I think that's just like one small example of just what's happening to the entire food system. And people aren't really looking at, what is the nutritional value and the taste of these things? Cause that's things are being bred for, okay, how big is this thing look? How does it look at the store when people grab it?
Can I make off of it?
How much money can I make off of it? And, we're trying to like go back to the way things have been done for most of humanity. And we just kind of forgot that when our whole food system got industrialized.
Yeah, 33 months is, like you said, a normal feedlot animal, 14, 16 months, something like that's when they come out. And, you see a strawberry that's like friggin' that big now. It's like, what the hell, where did that mutant come from? So yeah, we're definitely, but you're absolutely right. Crappy food is making everybody sick. I see that as a physician all the time. That's, again, what I'm trying to do is get people to stop eating this garbage, whether it's, just absolute garbage people just eat. When you start seeing food that's like fluorescent blue, it's like Captain Crunch flavored artificial maple syrup. I'm like, who the hell's eating that stuff? It's
right. Like, have you seen the grape apples? The apples are supposed to taste like grapes. Oh my God. Terrible. Yeah, but that's stuff. Another great thing that we got from our cows is we get so much soil out of it because we compost it. And Trav built these planter boxes and we grow our produce out of it. And we get the tiniest little strawberries that are so soft, like there's no way you could put it in like a thing and be able to preserve it for weeks on end. Like you literally have to eat it off of the vine. But you could just tell that like, oh my God, this is so much better than it's like, this mutant kind of fluorescent fruit that we're getting from the store.
So let me ask you this, because I know you guys, we got to be respectful of your time, but so Browsey Acres, do you guys ship to all 50 states? What is your, and then obviously there's a cycle, a breeding cycle and a harvest cycle. Are you, I mean, I guess the plan will eventually be the year-round shipping, but are you guys running in cycles right now where you're in and out of stock, and where do you ship to?
No, not right now. Right now we are full of stock. We have nearly 40,000 pounds of beef ready to ship and about 20,000 pounds of chicken ready to ship. So if you guys want to try some of the most quality protein that you can get, browseyacres.com. But we're ready. And then we're harvesting again starting in this June. So our idea was to kind of hold off on selling most of our stuff until we had that reserve so that we could be consistent in selling. Because the most frustrating thing that you could do, or that happens with me before we start growing our own beef, is that like, oh, I really love this place. Oh no, they're sold out for the next 5 months. You know what I mean? Now, then it's like, oh, I forgot about them. Oh yeah, I remember that. You see what I mean? So what we want to do is have that consistent amount of food for people to be able to come back and order whenever they're ready. So we're ready. We're open for business. And yeah, that's about it.
What you mentioned earlier, hanger steak, which a lot of people aren't familiar with a hanger steak, but hanger steaks are awesome. I've had quite a few of those. But what are y'all's individual favorite cuts? Do you guys have a favorite preference?
Oh, one of my favorite things that Trav does is he cooks a chuck steak for me, and then I chuck roast, but he'll like slice it small, and then he'll like fry it on the pan with butter and rosemary.
Doesn't even know how I do it.
What?
She doesn't know how I do it.
Okay,
she's more in love with how I do it than like.
Tell me how you do it. It's my favorite.
So I sous vide it for like 18 hours to get at a certain temperature, right? And then I'll slice it up, and then I'll just kind of quickly sear it on each side, and that with like little garlic, little salt, little truffle salt, little garlic, and then
didn't you put butter and rosemary in it?
And when I sous vide. I put a little bit of butter and rosemary in there when I sous vide.
And I put it on sourdough toast because I was making my own sourdough before for baby. And then, but any kind of sourdough, but that's like my favorite, like kind of my treat kind of a thing. But
it's making me hungry.
It depends. Yeah. It depends on the cow too. And like each cow, like Kobe, his ribeyes were amazing, but Porter, his New Yorks were incredible. And so that's kind of the cool thing about like knowing each animal and watching them grow up. You like see like this guy's kind of front heavy, this guy's kind of back heavy, this guy, and you can try. We love to try the whole cow, and
from nose
be able
to tail.
To know what's that
from nose to tail. And that's also one of the reasons why we sell the boxes the way that we sell them, because every cut on these animals are so tender and delicious. You get a sirloin tip roast, and I literally cut them into steaks and cook them like a steak, and it's so good and tender and delicious. One of my favorite cuts, more recently has been the hanger steak. Actually, I started cooking. I had a couple of those, last week, but also, man, the flat iron, the Terrace Major, these ones to me have a lot of beef flavor. Like the hanger steak is really like strong on the beef flavor. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, it's just, flank steaks are great. That's kind of known. But I like kind of the off cuts personally.
What about a lot of cow ends up as ground beef. I don't know how much on Wagyu relative to other, because, you might get more tender out of some of the cuts, but how do you guys, your ground beef, is it blended a certain percentage? Do you guys do like an 80-20, or how did you guys do that?
It's basically an 80-20.
Good.
And just so everybody knows, like, normally when you get a pound of ground beef, maybe from the supermarket, there's like 200-300 animals in that 1 pound of ground. So I hope you guys are ready to break up with your local grocery store, because it's absolutely gross. And in our ground beef from Browsey Acres, it's 1 pound of ground is one animal. Comes from one animal. And I think that has a lot to do with the taste difference and the texture and all that kind of stuff. Like we have my cousin opened up a food truck in Hawaii, and they sell our ground Wagyu burgers, and selling out every day. He's like, dude, I can't thaw out enough. I got to keep making burgers and, stuff like that. So we just sent him 560 pounds yesterday. Drove through rain, sleet, and snow.
You can't like mess it up either. Like I don't really know how to cook steaks, but the ground, I mean, I eat that all the time, especially like reheating it and making it for like I'll put nothing in it. I'll just make the ground, put like no kind of seasoning at all, because I love the taste of the meat itself. And a lot of times people put seasonings and all these things because they're trying to cover stuff up. I'm like, no, I want to taste the meat. I want to taste like everything that has been in this animal. I don't want to cover it up with anything. And literally I just like reheat the ground and like put it on rice all the time. And like, that's what me and Poe have for meals all the time. And it's so good. Like, you don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff if it's the quality is amazing. And just plain ground on rice is, I swear, what I eat every single day, me and my weirdly muscular baby.
Well, I mean, that is true, that good meat does not require all these sauces and seasonings and slather. That's when you have bad meat or you don't know how to cook. Either you don't know how to cook or you got bad meat, then you put all the sauce on there to disguise it. But good quality meat, yeah, a little bit of salt, maybe a little pepper, and that's it. And it's awesome. I'm the same way. I like to taste the meat. You know, I don't like all the other crap on there, because a lot of people send me all these seasonings. I'm like, that's cool, but I'll probably never use it. I'm never going to really use it. Maybe on a brisket, I might throw something on a brisket and do that, something like that. But generally, man, a little bit of salt. Literally, all I usually use is just salt, and it's good. I've got some of your ground beef in the freezer. I gotta try it, because I've had your steaks and they're outstanding. Awesome. You know,
I'll tell you what to do with the ground, because so much of, like, you know, Wagyu is so fatty, so like the fat will burn off a lot of time when you're cooking it. Save that fat, fry your eggs in it. It's like my favorite thing to cook with. Like, save the fat, anything that comes off of the ground, anything that comes off of anything. We're like, don't wash out that pan. Like, that's always our thing. Did you wash out that pan? Because we're always reusing the fat, because it's so healthy for you, but it just tastes incredible. And I'll always have like, you know, I'll have like a little jar or something by the side of the stove, just to, like, after cooking ground, to put it in. So anytime making eggs in the morning, use the Wagyu fat. Oh my God, change your life.
Well, awesome. So BrowseyAcres.com is where people can go to find and get some of the beef. And thank you. First of all, thank you guys for being ranchers. I always, I try to remember to do that, because anybody that's feeding us deserves a hell of a lot of thanks, because I think it's one of those. You know, I mean, most ranchers don't get no one to really thank them, and I think this is such an important thing to do. And you know, you guys could have went in a lot of different directions. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things you probably could have done from where you started from career wise, and so it's really heartening to see you guys taking this route. I think it's really cool, and I think ranchers are some of the most important people in the United States. I mean, they're part of the backbone of why we're a great country, and I mean, it's so
and that's
important
what
to
I'm
keep
learning.
this stuff.
That's what I'm learning a lot about it, are like the real ranchers, the real cowboys, the real farmers. They're such amazing people, and they don't get enough. They don't get enough thanks. They don't make enough money to support their family. They just don't get enough in general. And it's sad to see. Like, I don't need it, right? I don't need the thanks. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because it's a selfish reason. I love it. I love to be out there on my horse. I'm learning horsemanship and all that kind of stuff, and working with cattle. And that's so much fun for me. So I don't need anybody, but support your local rancher. That is a big thing. Find out who it is. Find out who that is. Go there, see how they practice, buy their products, buy their shirts, buy their hats, buy their, you know what I mean? That's how you support these people, is you just buy their products, you buy their meat. You know what I mean? That's how you do it. That's how you say thank you. Stop going to a grocery store. Break up with the grocery store. 99% of the food in a grocery store wasn't there, 100 years ago, and 100 years ago, 99% of the diseases weren't here. So there's a correlation, you guys.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll let you guys, we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much, guys. I'm going to hit stop. Here we go. So
stop while we're ahead.